Hey, this is Alex Head, founder of Subtext Radio.
This is Subtext.
Please go ahead and click the like button and the subscribe button. It really helps us to reach new audiences and promote the artists that we work with. Hit like and hit subscribe.
Had been the text he was after, and fates an accidental subtext. Subtext, 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 subtext.
I'm pressing record, and I'm now recording from the computer program. Record on this computer.
Exciting.
Continue.
All right. Continue.
Good morning, Alex.
Morning. This is like our pajama special.
This is the pajama special of off-air gems.
Yes.
Let's get right on it.
What a great pleasure it is to be back here on the computer with you.
Well, let's be honest, we have progressed. I think the first one was via mobile phone. And then we've done a couple with the computer, so who knows where this will take us in terms of technology.
Right, exactly. The only way is more expensive and more setup time, so that's great.
I like it. All right, I'm gonna go for it. I'm gonna throw a word in.
Yeah.
So I'd like to start with lightness and weight.
Okay, great. Are you going to start on the talking, or am I going to start?
You start on the talking. I mean, we have a form, but there is variety within the form. So you start on the talking, but I chose it.
Yeah, we have a form, but we do it every 6 weeks, so we tend to have to remember the form.
I think there's a nominal form that there's enough of a form to make it regular. Go for it.
Yeah, right. Lightness and weight. Okay, it's a good way to start the day, I guess. Without trying to be too philosophical or pseudo-spiritual. Well, I just had this experience of going back to Britain for my brother's wedding, which was cool and was a really beautiful event and like very small, and was in this tiny window where you could have 22 people in a field legally. And to my great surprise, I found that there was no longer any weight with like certain people in my family and stuff like that, and like whole like 20-year histories of like, oh, it's going to be a nightmare, it's going to be a fucking nightmare. Okay, what do I do when they say that? Oh, it's going to be fine. I think myself through it, and it was just like fine. It was just completely fine. So, you know, what I wanted to say is that if I can be a little bit spiritual about it, the one thing I have tried to do with varying degrees of success over the years is follow this idea that you should treat the things that are light with weight and the things which have weight with lightness. So the way I described that to my other brother was like giving up smoking, for example. It's like you can put it off till tomorrow, you can put it off till tomorrow. It's kind of like a light decision in a way. That's the one you're supposed to take seriously. This is what the Buddha said. And then the one of like, well, how am I ever going to get through this pandemic to see my family, and how am I going to even get back to be in the UK a bit more often and stuff. The huge, massive decisions in your life, those ones you should treat with lightness. And because there's nothing you can do about them today anyway, so you just got to let it happen. Yeah, that's me on lightness and weight.
Oh, I like it. I like Buddha and tea in the morning. Even though I don't think this is going to be broadcast in the morning, but you know, it doesn't matter. I like that. It's actually, I can relate to that. I also think that this idea of just going from what you said about the decision making, obviously that's really subjective, right? Which in a way makes it easy and difficult, because I find sometimes exactly what you were saying. Sometimes I find myself saying things like, "This is such a huge thing. I almost have to do nothing." Like, I know that's not quite what I mean. I'm not talking about being complacent in the face of like adversity. I just mean like exactly your example. I have no idea when I'm going to get to go and see my mum in Long Eaton, and I've cancelled 2 trips. And even last night we were talking on the old WhatsApp, and we were calling, and I was just like, I have no idea when we're going to meet. And she's cool about it as well. But we both and I think I must get this from her. Oh, it's a nice chat. I must get this from her because it's really this idea of like, it's such a huge thing. There is no point even trying to calculate how to get this. There's no point even trying to calculate how to achieve this, because something will happen that will trigger that decision. Like something will happen that will mean that we get to see each other. It will either be a lifting of the bans, a vaccine, or something less positive or something more positive. And that's why, just using your exact example, I really relate to that. I like it. And I think it's, do you sometimes find it really hard to describe to people who've maybe not had any experience in it? Because, you know, you did mention Buddha, and I have done like lots of meditation in the past, even though it might not seem like it. And there's a lot, and I feel like a direct link to that meditation and this mentality. And so so when you said it, I was like, I get that totally. But I find myself sometimes saying it to people and they're just like, yes, but I want to try and achieve this and I want to try and make this happen. It's just this acceptance that we can't control things, which is again the typical kind of kitchen fridge magnet version of it, I suppose. But
yeah, that's a really good way of putting it. Exactly. And I think it's just about reading. You have to be able to read yourself a bit, so you have to have some inner knowledge of self, and then you also, I think, have to be able to have the intuition to read the scenario like as it is, and then make a decision. And it kind of leads into, though I don't think we should necessarily go straight into our other topic that we're going to talk about later, spontaneity, because it isn't really spontaneity. It's actually more. It's actually more just kind of saying like, well, I will trust in myself to recognize the appropriate moment to act. And it doesn't mean that you're not acting the whole time. You're acting, just you're acting in not doing anything, right? You're not, because the more you run for something, the further you push it away, etc., etc.
Yeah.
So, but then, so you can get locked into that as well, and you can get nothing done for a long time.
You see, you were worried we didn't have enough words. We could have got a whole half hour on this. That's going to be an extended format. We can introduce that next time. No, beautiful. Yeah. I love that. I think that's a nice one to start on. And you're right. Let's not do spontaneity next, and let's not, and because I do view it quite differently. But I don't know. That was really lovely. I don't have anything else to say on that. Nice.
Yeah.
We could do it. I suppose we could.
Fun.
So, thanks and fun, because what are the other ones? Come on, let's just.
Looking at the other ones like, oh God, they're all about getting home to see your family, or.
Go on. Maybe we should go with the flow, as it were, and actually choose.
Well, let's go. Could we? I'd like to have a brief. Ausland and the Z song about learning to drive.
Okay, I like it. Choosing your own word. That's great. Learning to drive. That's the next topic. I'll start. I have never learnt to drive, and it's linked to family structures. My dad was the only person in the family that drove, and he passed away when I was 14. And as you know, in the UK, you start to learn to drive when you're 17. And so it was just like, I just took the bus everywhere like my mum did. And I toyed with the idea of getting a license at one point, and then it was too expensive. And now, can't be asked. So that's my... But I just went on a little mini holiday with my partner, and he drives, and that was great. I loved it, but then I get a bit sick being in a car for a while. So what's your... Yeah. So I'm afraid I don't have much to say on learning to drive.
Yeah, no, neither do I.
Go
really.
for it.
I mean, because I can't drive either.
Oh, right.
And I've also put it off for, well, obviously, as long as I could have done, because I was in London the whole time when I was growing up. So there was pretty precious little incentive. But yeah, my partner drives, and then there's been many conversations over the years of like, you know, one day, don't worry, I'll do the driving, you know, after like 3 days of like slogging it out, be like, you know, I think I should really learn to drive. But I've been living out in the Czech countryside, like was where we recorded the last one, and it just made so much sense to be able to drive from like Berlin, for example, to the Czech countryside or to Prague, and also like to see family in the UK. Like they've all moved out of London, mostly down to Cornwall, or like there are other friends on the other parts of the coast. So learning to drive suddenly has become like a way of giving back to everyone, really, like to family. I mean, obviously it'd be really good fun, and I'll get to learn more about Europe and stuff. But I think, I'm going to try and use a little bit of savings and do it somewhere where it's really cheap.
Wow.
So I'm going to do it. I'm going to fucking do it.
Oh
I'm
my
doing
god!
next year, yeah.
Well, good for you. I mean, I think it's so funny you say this because I was having a coffee with one of my nearest and dearests yesterday, and she was telling me that her partner is exactly the same as me. Like, she also doesn't drive, but her partner drives.
Yeah.
But her partner's got she's got an American license, and so she can only drive not in Germany. And they're currently having exactly this conversation of like, dear, could you make the effort to transfer your license over so that we can drive to like South Germany at some point and not be stuck in Berlin during COVID winter? Exactly this kind of exactly what you were saying. And I think it's just like, I think my friend's trying to gently push the partner into like, dear, could you please fill out the form and can we but good for you. I mean, I always well,
let's see it. I mean,
I always had this like image of like learning how to drive in like an abandoned car park somewhere, and that somebody would teach me. But I'm just a bit like, I'm sure that on many levels there's much more I can contribute, both to my relationship in terms of labour, maybe, and also just in terms of travelling. But you're right. I'll have to think about that one. All right, good one. Yeah. Good luck. Good
watch
luck.
this space.
Oh,
yeah.
You.
I'm sure I'm going to damage loads of cars.
I was going to say you should watch this space. You should watch this space.
Wait, space. No, use the available space. That's what you're supposed to. Oh no, that's a cyclist. Yeah.
Oh no. We're cycling though. Yeah, it's a tough one. All right. Okay. Good.
Okay. All right. You go.
Oh, what have I got?
Maybe something less fun.
What about buying new phones, getting new phones?
Oh, that's definitely less fun.
Do you want to do that one?
Yeah, should we get that one out?
Yeah, we always seem to leave the most obviously heavy ones, i.e. the one I suggested right to the end, but I quite like that because...
Yeah.
Let's do, I think we start... Go on, let's do buying new phones.
Yeah, because then the whole show can be like lightness and weight, and we start with lightness and get slowly more intense.
Well done, radio producer. Go for it. Am I recording this?
All right.
Yeah. Sorry.
All right, good. Okay, so getting a new phone. Again, I won't try and go on for too long, but I feel like I could. Oh, Jesus Christ. So, I think I must have, like, full disclosure, I must have dropped my phone in Cornwall at this wedding, and then just sort of thought, well, there's no reception in Cornwall anyway. And also, we were literally right next to GCHQ, like all the big satellite dishes. It's pretty weird. I always forget that. And I'm like, oh, hello. So I was like, oh, it's just gone off the network, fine. And then I left it. And actually, I realised now that the phone company doesn't have my email. So they would have probably been writing to me a lot and sending me messages saying, like, your contract's going to end, your contract's going to end.
Oh, wow.
So
Sorry, this is like...
I got back to Berlin. I'm like, all right, contract's ended, no problem. I'll just get a new contract. So I signed up a new contract. And I went to get the SIM card changed. And then the guy in the shop was like, yeah, it's definitely the SIM card. So he switched it out. I'm not going to go through the whole story, but basically now what I have is a totally almost useless iPhone, which doesn't connect to the network, but weirdly does still get text messages.
Oh my god!
That totally breaks my the whole paradigm of what's going on here.
But do you?
Because I have a burner, which I now have my official SIM card in.
A burner. I love that you're calling it a burner.
It's off the internet, obviously. But like, how does that make any sense? How can my smartphone still be getting like analog text messages? And like, the whole thing's a myth. I mean, you can get Wi-Fi in Lidl now. Why do I even have a phone contract? I mean, we can talk, I can work, I can do basically everything if I have a Wi-Fi. It's weird, man. Anyway.
May I?
So,
May I?
Yeah, please,
no,
sorry.
Because
please do.
Because what I like about our topics is that we don't always choose ranty ones, because there's plenty of other formats for that. But the interesting thing is, I also am notorious for dropping my phone, and it's always cracked, and everyone close to me is annoyed about it. And I think it's partly because I've never bought one. I've always had them given to me by my mother. She gave me about 3. And then this very friend that I just told you about that I had a coffee with yesterday, she's given me about 3 or 4. And then my partner gave me 1. And specifically those 3 people are always just like, why do you keep dropping your phone? That's annoying.
Yeah.
So what happened was, I think I dropped it, and then the SIM card got... This is really recently, right? I dropped it, and the SIM card got like... mixed around, and then I forgot the code, and then I put the code in wrong, and then I put the code in wrong because the screen was a bit jolted, so it kind of ticked. So then it got like locked, and then I was like, oh, I can't be fuck to order a SIM card? Okay, so I've got a really cheap package actually, similar to this little one. Like I pay about, I think, €10 a month for everything.
Oh wow, that's amazing.
And but the thing is, I ordered the SIM card and it like not even straight away, because I took the SIM card out and, as you said, the phone functioned on the old Wi-Fi's. Yeah. I could use WhatsApp, I could use everything. I just didn't have a phone. I couldn't make actual phone calls, so, which was, in a way...
It's so weird.
Yeah, but in a way it was so nice, because like I missed phone calls that I just didn't need. It was great. Yeah. But then the funny thing is, I bought a refurbished phone, because I thought the phone was shot, right? I bought a refurbished phone and I had it delivered to my place, and then it got lost in the post. Stuff always gets lost in the post. I wonder if it was stolen, because it did say like phone company on it. So this refurbed thing in Germany that I sent you the link for, which is cool because like environmentally friendly, right? And I got it.
I hope so.
Well, because I think the idea.
Oh, right, it's because it's reused. Yeah.
I think the idea is they fix old phones, right?
Right.
Extraction and all that, and then I thought, oh god, the phone's just like lost. So they sent me another one, and they sent it to my work address. Picked it up from there. When was that? A month ago. Where's that phone? Still in the box. I'm still just using this one.
Oh wow.
I'm still using
man, I should have called you before I started.
I'm still using the broached one because I did order a new SIM card, put the new SIM card in, and I mean, you can't see it because we're on the old audio, but this phone is cracked. It's stuck together with like bright pink gaffer tape, and my new old phone is still in its box, ready to be rebooted.
And then wait till you drop the other one in a puddle.
Waiting till I drop the other one in a puddle, which I hope I don't do, because I'll need that SIM card, because that was the issue.
Oh yeah.
So basically, I thought
it is a fucking nightmare. It's not just me then. Okay, so it's really confusing.
It's really.
I feel like I'm getting old or something. Like I don't understand. I went to the shop 3 times yesterday. That's why I was so fucked up.
Oh no! Why did you go 3 times?
Because basically I got confused, and I was like, because I've been out of the country for 3 months, so I thought my German's really, really ropey. It's fucking ropey anyway.
Oh dear.
But it's like that sort of point where like you say stuff and you think you're having one conversation, but actually it turns out 6 hours later that you were having a different one. And I thought I could get another SIM card, put it in my burner, and then have like an offline phone that I would be like super cool for the digital age and be like offline and stuff, like off-air gems, but offline gems. And then I would like go out with my burner and be like, no, you can't, whatever, I'm not being traced, no one's got my data. But so he was like, yeah, it's an ersatz SIM card. And I was like, cool, ersatz, that must mean like a secondary one. And then I was like, I put it in, and nothing was happening.
Yeah, no, ersatz is like
it's a replacement.
Yeah.
Replacement, isn't it?
Which is what ersatz means.
Yeah, it turns out that's what ersatz. But the thing that was nice is I said to him from behind my mask, of course, I was like, oh, that's fine, Missverständnis. And he looked at me like, why don't I use that word more often? He was like, yeah, Missverständnis. It was Missverständnis. And I was like, yeah, it's simple. It's just a miscommunication. And he was just like, yeah, all right. So we left it on a good note.
I was
but
going
now
to say,
I've got to cancel
you had good vibes.
the other one because I've got now I've spent €60 on SIM cards this week for no reason.
No, but but the thing is though, it sounds like because you had a contract. Anyway, whatever. This is like better advice on how to get a phone. Yeah. So my new phone, which is a new old phone, is still in its box, and I need to get that up and going. And SIM card does not. Yeah, is it the phone? Is it the SIM card? Take a minute to think about it. Is the moral of the story? All right.
Thank you.
We're good.
We're
good. Let's go with the heavy and end with the other.
Yeah. Okay. I think you're gonna start with it. All right. Here we go.
So what's the next one then? All right. So I'll do it.
Yeah.
So I wanted to, as a word or as a term, epistemological racism. Epistemological racism. And I just came across this because I was looking at research into higher education and the way people learn and ways of knowing, right? Because that would be my loose translation of epistemological stuff. And the really interesting thing about it, I read this one article which was from 1997. This is where it gets a bit nerdy, I'm afraid. It was 1997 by two people in the States, Shorik and Young, and they are education researchers and like social workers, right? So that's important. And they basically made this argument of, okay, so you know how like stuff that we already know, right? Basically, like, yeah, institutions are built on ways of knowing, and institutions are built on codes and patterns and structures that don't suit everybody and that are based on the dominant culture. And what they argue is that it's not necessarily the way that these codes, rules, patterns, structures are used that is racist, but the structure in itself that is racist. So that's what epistemological racism is. It's like, it's super basic. I feel it's one of those weird things, because this article was from 1997 and we're now in 2020. But we're not just in 2020 January, we're in 2020 September. And like the shift in the last couple of months has been intense. And I think that even towards the end of last year, like, or in the last couple of years, where people are beginning to like understand that institutional racism is an actual thing. Yeah. So that's why a term like this would have been quite exciting. But I think now I feel like it's a bit like wonderful. It's one of those instances where we find an actual term rooted in an academic article which just legitimizes the lived experience. And I think it's one of those things where, do you see what I mean? Like, I think I was so happy when I discovered this terminology, which because it means that I can actually legitimately write about these issues, which is kind of sad. But that's the way it is. But yeah, I thought it was super interesting. And then there was another article about how do we actually, like, what would be then an ethnic epistemology? Like, what would that mean to have an epistemology based on other ways of knowing? And how do we ensure nuance, which is always one of my favorite things? How do we ensure nuance, and how do we prevent stereotyping? And I just found it really exciting.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, that's really, I mean, so that's, you kind of answered maybe the question that I might have had there, which is like whether it feels that it's a different place to discuss those kinds of things now, and that's really great to have it being brought up, and like that you have that sense that it has more register now, or like it registers in a different way now as a term, and it coheres perhaps, and definitely it coheres for more people, like would recognise what that is now than 8 months ago. But I think what was good as well is like that you began discussing that in terms of those two researchers by situating like who they are and what they do, and the expertise from which they can speak, which is not an expertise from which I can speak. And I think that's a big part of it, is kind of like not making assumptions, right? So it's one of those terms as well which, again, like anything to do with epistemology can be, it's like phenomenology, it's like it can be incredibly dense until you get some terms maybe, or you have some time, and that also, you know, signifies its value as well. So it's like one of those things where if you look at it for long enough, it becomes clearer and clearer, and it becomes more and more evident. And when you think about it, oh yeah, of course, like the structures of knowledge are like built around these, like, you know, halls of power, you know, like even just the architecture of
but it's not just universities, you know. I mean, I discovered it being in a university context, but it's everywhere. And I think it's that thing of like, you know, neutral, there is no neutral, right? Dominant is not neutral. The given mode, the given way of doing something is not neutral. And I think that's what's interesting about it. The other thing that I wanted to say is, okay, even the term like epistemological racism, right? It's using the R word, and as we know, using the word racism or Rassismus in Germany, even that has changed drastically in literally the last like 2-3 months, right? And I think that I actually talked about some of my work at a conference recently. Oh man, it was shit. Oh, it was really depressing. No, it was, you know what? It was a learning experience, but it just kind of like, I talked about my project. I talked about it in German, but I tried to use those terms in English and I even made a point of saying the word racism here sounds quite harsh as we understand it in a German context, because you know how normally everyone just shies away from it. But even that felt a bit outdated, because I even felt like there was, even in that very conservative space, there was even more receptibility to the word, because I feel like now there's been such a tipping point, or whatever the phrase is, such a turning point, tipping point, I don't know, where now we're...
Definitely in the discourse.
Yeah, well, any discourse, like, I feel like we're allowed to say the word in like official discourses now, like even in official documents or whatever.
Yeah, and that's what we said for so many years, was like, name it racism,
Yeah,
right? That was
yeah.
one of the good calls. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, anyway, so in a way, like, it sounds like a heavy term, but I feel really happy to have recently discovered it, because it just seems like an all right time to use it. Like, I'm just imagining, like, 10 years ago, if I was trying to write about it, or let's just put it differently, the people who have been writing about it, or up until now, the people who have been working up on it up until now, have probably faced so much resistance to it. And I guess it's our job, my job, to kind of build on their work and honour their work and not ignore it, right? Anyway, God, this is going in lots of different directions now, but...
Yeah, and there is so much to talk about, isn't there? And I feel also like, I do feel like it just deserves its own, just a lot. I mean, it's not going to be like the last time we discussed these kinds of issues, but I think the thing that was more the vocabulary that I was kind of familiar with a few years ago was this idea of institutional racism.
Yeah.
Which I think goes, but also sounds as though it goes beyond the idea of the academy.
Sure. And
because it's like, you know, obviously in Britain we still have problems of institutional racism in the police. I think not as bad as it was from what I can tell, but only because it was so incredibly entrenched in the London police, for example, of like the 70s and the 80s, and I'm sure prior to that as well. But so institutional racism is something which, like there was that story, wasn't there, last week, where the barrister was going in, and she had to say, like, a dozen times that she's like, no, I'm actually on the defence, I'm actually working as a barrister, I'm not fucking, the suspect in this case, like going into work, into the courtroom. So anyway, that was just, like you say, a shift in the language, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I just one last thing. I wouldn't even say it's a shift in the language. I think the terms exist together. I think that institutional racism is the practical reality of epistemological racism. Well, that's a good one. Like, because. But yeah, again, I would have to even like think about it a bit more. Like, epistemological racism is like the way we understand something to be. The way we understand something to be then leads us to create policies, make decisions. Like, even to decide, okay, this road we're going to plough, this road we're not going to plough. Like even these sort of like kind of like urban whatever decisions, or whatever you call them, like logistics and things. And I'm just throwing words out.
Yeah,
so what I'm saying, urban planning, that's the one.
Totally.
So like, you've got this kind of like phenomena, which is epistemological racism, which leads to all these decisions, which then maybe allow something like institutional racism to exist. But it's definitely linked, but they're not ersatz words, if I may.
You bastard. You always have to make it into a German lesson, don't you?
No, I'm just creating loops in our discussion. I'm creating non-linear loops in our discussion.
I appreciate that. And yeah, so, well, Scheisse, there's so much more to learn, isn't there?
Definitely. I think you're going to like the recording of that, because it skipped a bit, but that sounded kind of cool. Next one then.
Okay, let's do this. Let's do it. We're going to talk about spontaneity. And I guess we're going to try and do it in the most spontaneous fashion that we can. So let's try and decide who's going to speak first right now.
I used to hate the word, because I feel like, so I'm someone who likes to plan things a lot, right? And I think when I was a bit younger, I would always be faced with people being like, oh my God, be spontaneous and like seize the day. And now I'm just like, shut the fuck up. Like, spontaneity there's so much, like, it's beautiful. It's beautiful when one can be spontaneous, but like, let's pick that apart. Like, what does that mean?
Yeah.
I don't know. So this was a bit of my ranty word, and not to be like being spontaneous is shit. Being spontaneous is amazing, but I felt like this pressure to like seize the day and be spontaneous, I feel like two different things. So there you go. That's my first thought.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Shall I have a first thought?
Go for it. Before I don't want to get too negative.
Time is. Where are we with time?
Don't matter. We can
28. All right, we're good. We can go over a bit as well, I think.
Sure.
Anyway, so let's be spontaneous about the time as well. Yeah, it's kind of a nonsense, isn't it? I mean, on the one hand, I feel like spontaneity is like a concept that's best considered in a really relaxed, nice, long-distance way, you know? So it's nice to think that, okay, so maybe spontaneity is a thing that it's nicer to think about other people doing than yourself, for example. Because if you're really spontaneous, you're probably not really thinking, oh, let's be spontaneous. You're probably just like, oh, my leg really hurts, I need to go to hospital, you know? Or like, I'm not going to make that train door, let's run for it. You know, you're not, if you're really spontaneous, you're not in the mode thinking like, you know what, man, I'm going to do something spontaneous.
But, yeah, you're totally right. But then there's also, like, you know, the German use of the word spontan, which kind of, like, affects things. And when I was first learning German, I was like, oh, spontaneous. But then it was like, let's meet tomorrow spontaneously. And I was like,
that's true.
That's interesting. That's a form of spontaneity that I can get with.
That's exactly what I'm saying, though.
Yeah, like spontaneity with a kind of like reasonable amount of like
with planning. A 24-hour lead-in.
Because do you know what? And this is where I bring it all back to my topics, whatever. Like, planning is like really respectful, because I feel like if you're, and again, we're obviously saying this a bit tongue in cheek, but you know what I mean? Like, something that's so spontaneous can often be without consent. And I think that that is also like a really, it's not taking into consideration the needs and the kind of like requests of other people. And I feel like, you know, like, I don't know, just how spontaneous can a person be who has responsibilities with work or home or something like that? I don't know. I just.
No, that's really interesting to tie it to consent. That's really, really interesting.
I think so. I think in some cases, not in all cases. Of course, like, for example, yesterday I texted, just to carry on the story of my friend with the coffee whose partner drives but she doesn't drive. You know, yesterday we're texting in the morning and she's like, oh, I'm going to be in the neighbourhood around, got to do something at 3 o'clock. Do you want to go for a coffee at about 2? And I was like, oh, yeah, let's do it. You know, that is like, it's spontaneity with consent and with with what's the German word is Absprache, but how would you say that in English?
I actually don't know what the English word is for Absprache, but I guess I would make a flying guess that it would be like with forewarning.
Forewarning sounds really epic. It's more just like
agreed forewarning.
Agreed spontaneity. Oh, I'm writing that down.
Fucking genius.
Wait, consensual spontaneity, because
that's
I think
going to be my tattoo. I'm going to get a tattoo of it.
Consensual spontaneity, because I think that it's like, do you see what I mean? Like, I think this whole let's be spontaneous, let's do it now, and it's like, well, okay.
Nothing is really spontaneous. I mean, that's the thing. It's a myth. It's like, it relates to epistemological racism as well. It's not fucking just happening now. You know, like, this is, there are reasons, there are epistems.
Epistems, exactly.
You know? So fuck off with your spontaneity. And it's also really shit Buddhism to say that as well. You know, it's just like you say, fridge magnet Buddhism. Like, be spontaneous. Like, well, you know, all of your things, all your desires are constructed from one thing. You know, it's not like a bad thing, but they do come from places.
Oh, you hit the nail on the fridge magnet head there, because it's like, yeah, you're totally right. It's just this when the word is used as an attack for somebody who, when the word is used as an attack, and when the word is used to signify a better alternative, then it feels very superficial and just not nuanced. Yeah,
but then the one thing I was thinking about spontaneity, to flip it on its head, is, you know, these guys and girls, the sponties, like these activists that would do the equivalent now of a flash mob, but like in the 60s and 70s, right? Particularly leading up to like 77. And they were from like Italy, and then they were really popular in Germany, which is quite surprising. And like all over Europe, you had the sponties, and they would just do like, they would suddenly just get together and do a protest on the street, like spontaneously. So I figured actually what with like trying to plan the future under this situation, everyone has to be more spontaneous. Like, just emotionally, you don't necessarily get to act. Actually, most of the things that you wanted to do, you won't be able to do. But you have to be emotionally spontaneous insofar as you just have to say, well, I can't do it, so go and change it. And
yeah, I mean,
this
is perfect, because this brings us right back to what we were talking about at the beginning. I think being emotionally spontaneous is very different, and I think that that's a really good point. And also this idea of, that's a great point, but also, these spontees, they were organised.
Right, yes. Good
like,
point.
You know what I mean? Like, you have to be... and I think that this is another myth as well. Actually, you know what? Maybe not so much now. I think people are realising, like, that we need organisation to get shit done. I think that's clear. But I like your idea of this emotional spontaneity to get through what we're going through. With lightness and weight. Oh my God,
imagine if we kept going for an hour, we'd probably solve the world's problems. But we have to leave it there. So.
My students would be a bit pissed off that I cancelled their Zoom. That I cancelled their Besprechungen though. Gonna have to go. I've got to go. Literally got to go. Actually.
I know. I'm looking at the time. Yeah. All right. Well, a pleasure as ever.
I love it. It's great.
Yeah. Awesome.
I'm gonna. Wait, hang on a second.
Should we do that thing where we clap at the end? And just that'll be it. We'll clap at the same time at the end.
I still never understand what this is. Can we do 1, 2, 3, then clap? Is that what that is? Okay, you say 1, 2, 3.
Okay. 1, 2, 3. Awesome.